In a world of deception and broken vows, I found myself standing on the edge of sanity. My beautiful wife, once the embodiment of grace and love, now lay bare in the arms of another. The luxurious bedroom, our sanctuary, had become a theater of betrayal. The shock of her infidelity cut deeper than any blade, igniting a firestorm of rage within me. My heart shattered, my soul darkened. This wasn't just an affair. It was a declaration of war. As I confronted her lover, the fury consumed me, blurring the lines between justice and revenge. This is my story, my reckoning, my vengeance. I usually didn't go to bars, but I was with a friend who wanted to celebrate his divorce. It took me back to my own experience. Mine was messy and hurtful. She cheated, got caught, and didn't want to deal with it. When her lawyer said she couldn't get rid of the prenuptial agreement, she had a huge outburst. I still have a recording of it on an old phone. I listened to it each year on the anniversary of the divorce to remind myself that I made the right choice. For me, divorce wasn't something to celebrate. It felt like failure, like promises were broken, and I didn't want to celebrate failure. I noticed there were many older women at the club, and it hit me that Rex was likely looking for women like that. Maybe he had some issues or was just looking for attention. But there we were. He had just turned 40, and I was a little over 44. Some days I felt much older. I stayed in shape with an active life and going to the gym, but some mornings I felt stiff and achy. My doctor once said that even if I was 44, my body was like someone in their early 30s. But on those mornings, my back always disagreed. I wasn't there to judge any of it, so I tried to enjoy the moment. I danced a lot, even with some women who had to be in their 60s, and they kept up with me easily. One woman, who was full of energy, told me she was 67 and then winked. "I much prefer 69. There are things I could show you, sweetie, that would amaze you." I believed her, but I was trying to think of how to leave when Rex stumbled over, grinning and full of drinks. "Who's that?" Before long, they were dancing close together, and Rex had his hand on her back while she had her hand moving between them. They vanished about 20 minutes later, and I didn't see him again until Monday. After a while, I decided I had enough for the night and started to leave. That's when she walked in. Her bright red hair reached her waist. Her skirt was very short, and a small move might lead to trouble. The white silk blouse was opened. Her face was round, with a cute nose and striking blue eyes. She was exactly what many might look for, if they wanted something without attachments. Sadly, I didn't feel the same spark. The way she scanned the room showed she was looking for her next catch. Her gaze crossed over me, then came back for a second look, which made me think I might catch her interest. But the woman she was with was a whole other story. She had a quiet kind of beauty. Her clothes, her jewelry, and the way her light blonde hair fell didn't shout about her money. They just hinted that she had it, and it wasn't something she felt needed to talk about. She was lovely in a calm way. You could see that this place wasn't where she usually spent her time. She didn't look uncomfortable, but rather uninterested. She sipped her single martini while her friend quickly drank 3 and danced with different partners. Several young men came up to ask her to dance, but she turned them down with a cool look. I found her interesting, so I walked over as a gentle song played. "May I have this dance?" She looked me up and down, sizing me up, then shook her head slightly. "I'm 51. "Great. Does that mean you can't dance?" "Not if the guy is in his 30s. "Well, perhaps we should find one here and make sure he knows not to ask. I'm actually closer to your age than you think, and I'm well past my 30s. Enjoy your evening, madam." I turned to walk away when I felt her touch my arm. "I'm sorry. It's clear I don't want to be here, but since I am, I might as well dance with a nice man and make the best of it. If you'd still like to—" She was light and an excellent dancer. I mentioned it, and she smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. My husband and I took dancing lessons for fun. I liked it, but he loved it, especially when he started getting close with one of the teachers. She was 25 and took him away from me. We divorced so he could marry her. That must have hurt. Oh, it did at first. But on the bright side, we had a successful business together, and since we didn't have a prenuptial agreement, I ended up with half of it. Our investments grew well. She took everything from him in 3 years, and I bought half his share of the business so he could pay her off. He still runs the company because he's smart when it comes to business, but he hates having to answer to me. I bet if he could go back, he wouldn't have taken those lessons. By then, we had moved off the dance floor and found a quiet spot. I smiled and said, "So, you're attractive, wealthy, and own a business. Why isn't there a second Mr. Angela?" She frowned. "There have been a few who wanted the role. Sadly, they didn't measure up. How about you?" I frowned too. "She chose someone who's a lot like your ex." "I doubt it's the happy life she dreamed of. I heard he made her sign a very strict agreement and keeps a close watch on her. After what she did to me, he must know that given the chance, she'd do it to him too." "Is there anyone out there waiting to write Mrs. Reggie?" "There was one 2 years ago. Let's just say we had different hopes for the future, and we didn't end things on a good note." "Love is tough," I said. "I think love is beautiful, but only if you find the right person." I lifted my glass. "Here's to love when it's right." She lifted hers. "Here's to knowing when it is." We talked for an hour, and I was surprised that the time flew by. I glanced behind her and smiled. "I think your friend found some guys in their 30s. Her smile faded as she watched her friend come closer. She paused when she saw me but kept her smile. "Look who I found, Angie. I brought you one, but it looks like you already have a catch. I think I'll keep both of them. See you tomorrow." She looked back as they walked away, both guys trying to get her attention. "Maybe." Angela looked unhappy. It hit her hard when her husband left her. She had surgery to look younger, hoping to win him back. He wanted nothing to do with her afterward, and now she's taking some risky paths to feel attractive. All she's found are guys who want to take advantage of her. I hope she realizes the truth. It's sad because she really is a nice woman and still good-looking for her age. We have 3 other close friends from college, and we take turns trying to help her stay on track until she sees sense. I'm starting to lose hope. I'm sure one day she'll wake up with a terrible headache and a young man beside her. Then she'll think, "I'm too old for this." After that, she might start to change. You have to make yourself happy first, and she's clearly not happy right now. Her face brightened. "Thanks, Reggie. That's great advice. I think I'll focus more on my own happiness from now on." Her phone buzzed, and she checked it. "My ride is here. Can you walk me out?" I took her arm, and as we walked, she suddenly started laughing. "What's funny?" I asked. "Don't look, but those women over there are staring at me." "Why would they do that?" "Because they think I got lucky with you. You're the most handsome guy here. They probably think that I'm going to take you away for a wild time, where we're just crazy for hours. Then I'd wake up and you'd be ready for more. But I'm sure you'd be fine while I'd be exhausted. It's all in their heads." I smiled. "I wouldn't mind that idea." "Not happening! I think you might wear me out a bit too much." We reached her ride. "I think, dear Angie, that you underestimate yourself. I feel like you could burst with energy, surprising everyone around you. It would be a way to go out with a bang. Good night, Angela. It was great to meet someone like you." I meant to give her a kiss on the cheek, but she pulled me in and gave me a big kiss, full of passion. Then she stepped back, her cheeks red. She smiled and said, "Big changes ahead, honey. Don't get too close." "I'm already close," I replied. We both gasped when we pulled away. The Uber driver looked at us and smiled. "Do I need to go?" "No, you need to take her home safely. Good night, Angela." She was still trying to find her words as I closed the door and he drove off. 3 weeks passed. I thought about that beautiful blonde a few times, but tried to keep it as a nice memory. Rex avoided looking me in the eye until I told him what happened in the cougar cave stays there. Then he relaxed and laughed. "She nearly knocked me out. The woman just couldn't get enough, then she collapsed for 10 hours. I was getting worried, but when she woke up, she rushed to the shower and looked back at me asking if I was coming. She said we didn't have time for much because she was late for a family event, but there might be a moment for a quick kiss. After that, she showed me pictures of her grandkids and said she had 4 of them for the day. I asked if I could see her again, and she smiled. I doubt it. I'm too old to limit my fun and usually don't do round 2s. You were great, honey, but you're just one of many. Thanks for the night." So the cougar had her fun and is ready to look for more? That's pretty tough. Rex just laughed. "There are plenty of cougars out there, my friend. Ready for another adventure? I heard you left with a seriously attractive woman." "I didn't leave with her. We just walked out together. Honestly, she was way hotter than I expected to see in a place like that. You're lost, buddy. You should have gone for it. Dude, go for it. What are you, 16? Maybe you need to spend time with older ladies. Maybe they'll help you grow up. That's never going to happen. I tried being responsible with my wife, and we all remember how that went. I'm not taking any woman seriously again. You'll be married again in 2 years. I bet you a case of beer I won't. If you win, I'll throw you a party. If I win, you have to hand over the beer and admit I'm right. You do have an annoying way of being right, but not this time. That case will be the best beer I ever drink. Rex walked away laughing, and I couldn't help but smile. We would see. 2 weeks later, I met him for tennis, and he had a big smile on his face. "What's up with you?" I asked. "Nothing much. I just made some extra money over the weekend, and it put me in a good mood." We started our game. He was younger and quicker, but I had been working out regularly while he had been out late. My training paid off, and I won the match easily. But my knee reminded me how hard I had pushed myself when we finished. As we caught our breath before going to shower, he smiled again. "Remember that extra money I mentioned? I got it because of you." "Me? What did I do?" "You made quite an impression on Grandma Hottie. She came to the club looking for you. When they told her I could help, she grabbed me. I thought something fun would happen, but I was wrong. She made a deal with him. I'll give you $200 if you can tell me how to reach Reggie. Better yet, give him this card and tell him to call me. I want to talk to him." I thought it would be funny, so I asked her if she was pregnant. Here's a tip. Don't make her mad. She slapped me and my jaw still hurts. Anyway, I promised to pass on her message and this card. Here. When I got home, I looked at the card. It was from Angela Bassett, CEO of Bassett Enterprises. Her cell number was on the back. It was only 7:30, so I decided to call. "Hello?" She sounded a bit careful, probably because she didn't know the number. "Hi, is this Angela Bassett, the one voted hottest grandmother in the state 2 years in a row? It's Reggie Wilkes." I could hear her smile through the phone. "The same Reggie Wilkes rumored to take over for Dorian Gray? How old are you now? 33? 30? I'm old enough to look good with you on my arm. How are you, Angie? I hear you're looking for me." "Just a little. I thought about how much it would take to have you come to me, but then I decided to do it the old-fashioned way. What are you doing next Saturday?" "I have no big plans." "Great! My company is having an award ceremony, and as the host, I have to be there. My ex will be bringing his new girlfriend, and I want to show him I'm doing well." "You want me to come along to make him jealous? How sly, Angie? Let's say it like this. You come to the event with me, and maybe I'll let you make things a bit cozy for us. What time do I pick you up?" Her laugh was bright and easy. "I'll pick you up in a limo. I'm coming in strong. Just so you know, expect some surprises throughout the night. I think we should have dinner and plan. I don't want to be caught off guard if he asks me about your favorite style." There was a pause before she chuckled again. "I'm not really into thongs, but if he asks, tell him light green." "I won't do that. I'll say your new favorite is the black one I took from you in the limo and put in my pocket. Gotta love those privacy screens." A moment of quiet turned into a giggle. "This is going to be so much fun." On Sunday, we went to dinner. Her house was really nice. It wasn't too big or fancy, just simple and elegant. I told her how much I liked it, thinking about it like a builder would. She frowned for a moment. "You should have seen the big house he convinced me to buy. Why do 2 people need 6 bedrooms? This one has 3, but it's about the same size. I let him keep it after our divorce, and he lost it in the next one. Now he lives in a small condo and can barely pay for it." "That's rough for him, huh? First he lost quality, then he lost space. His next place will probably cost him a lot and might be a small one." She shot me a funny look as she tried not to laugh. "Don't make me laugh too loud at the dinner table. It wouldn't be proper. And thank you, Reggie." I shrugged. "Sometimes you just have to say what's true. That lobster sounds really good, doesn't it?" We had a nice, slow dinner, and our chat wandered everywhere. We talked about places we had visited, places we wanted to return to, and places we never wanted to see again. When dinner was done, neither of us wanted to leave, so I took her to a hidden spot most people didn't know about. It was a roots music place. One week there might be folk music, the next country or bluegrass. Sometimes they had African groups playing percussion, and other weeks it was blues or jazz. She watched the show that night with excitement. It was a blues duo, a woman in her 30s and a man in his 50s. He played guitar and keyboards, sometimes switching to bass and harmonica. She was also a great guitarist. With their kick drum and hi-hat, you'd think there were more than 2 people on stage if you hadn't seen it yourself. When they took a break, others looked at us curiously. I had on a nice suit, and Angie was dressed elegantly in a copper-colored dress with sparkling jewels. Most people were in jeans and t-shirts. She started talking with the woman next to her and quickly got her phone out to check out other acts she might like. Soon, there was a crowd around her at the snack bar. This place was family-friendly, so no alcohol was served. We caught the second show, and most kids were already at home and asleep. Angie was still buzzing with energy when we left, chatting non-stop. I walked her to her door, and she sighed. "I really want to invite you in for breakfast tomorrow, but it feels too soon. We'll just keep a note and promise that if you're good, nice things will happen soon. For now, here." It was about as heated as 2 grown-ups could get, acting like excited teenagers who didn't quite know what to do yet. We paused, breathing hard and laughing before diving back in for another 5 minutes. Finally, she pushed me away. "That's enough. If we keep this up, we'll be crossing a line right at the door. Good night, Reg. Good night, my lovely friend. Look up what Gilaf means if you don't know. I'll see you Saturday." If I thought she was amazing on our dinner date, the dress she wore for the event was even more stunning. It was a long, black dress made of a shiny fabric, with a high slit and a deep neckline that made you take notice. Her beautiful legs were accentuated by high heels. She smiled at how I reacted. "Close your mouth. I told you I was going all out. Do you like how everything looks? I'm wearing a nice bra, too." "You look amazing." She giggled and handed me something. "Here, a little gift to remember tonight." I looked down at a tiny piece of lace, black and delicate. Her smile grew bigger. "Yes, I wore it for a bit. Wouldn't want him to see it and have it not be real." I had to force myself not to examine it too closely in front of her. When we got to the hotel, I saw her business must be quite successful, judging by the crowd. There were almost 200 people, and many of them were lining up to talk to her. A lot of them were eyeing me, trying to figure out my place in all of this. Angie was friendly and charming, just the right mix. We chatted with people, and about 45 minutes later, I felt her tense up. "That's my ex," she whispered. I turned to see a normal, slightly heavyset man with a young woman by his side. It felt sad and strange. He walked toward us. "Angie." He said it flatly without any warmth, but she was all smiles. "Hello, Ben. Let me introduce my date. This is Reggie Wilkes. Reggie, my ex-husband, Ben." Ben's handshake was weak, the kind that makes you distrustful. Maybe my feelings were influenced by what she had told me about him. He hardly spoke, but the young woman with him talked a lot. She was good at appearing friendly, but her eyes were sizing me up. I had done well in my business, but I doubted I was in the same league as Angie when it came to wealth. I was careful with my money and lived well enough. Angie was polite, trying hard not to laugh. We had a nice dinner, and Angie's speech got a good round of applause. Then her ex spoke, but his words were dull and uninspired. He promised everyone that the company was in safe hands as long as he was in charge. I could tell that not many people believed him, as the applause was not very enthusiastic. Next, the orchestra began to play. Angie was a great dancer, and I held my own, so we danced for a while. Soon, she had to dance with other people in the company, and I danced with their partners. Most people asked how serious we were. I had a funny answer ready. "I'm just here for show. She'll take me home tonight and wear me out. Then I'll be sent away until she needs me again." Some people thought I was serious, but most of the ladies laughed and said Angie made a good choice. When I danced with the ex's girlfriend, I really went for it, telling her about our upcoming trip to Europe in the summer, saying we would stay at my place in France and my condo in London, and maybe visit some islands. I thought she might cling to me forever. Angie noticed and came to my rescue, gently pulling the other woman's hands off me. "He's mine, darling. Don't worry, you've got the backup. Want to dance again, honey?" I shared what I'd said with her, and she burst into laughter. Her ex approached me as I was getting us some drinks. "Are you too serious?" he asked. "If I have my way, the company might get a new name," I replied. He got angry. "The company is mine. No name changes." "It was yours, and from what I hear, you messed it up pretty badly." You should know by now that bad choices can come from poor thinking, and you better watch out with your new girlfriend or you might end up in more trouble than you think. You jerk, I'm going to. What will you do, Ben? Look at Reggie. His suit isn't padded, he's strong, and he would handle you easily. I'll even stand back and watch if you want to fight. No? Good choice. Angie turned to me with a playful look. Sweetheart, I seem to have lost something. Have you seen it? This? I said, holding up a piece of clothing. Sorry, the limo got here faster than we thought, and you didn't have time to put it back on, remember? She took it from me with a grin, looking at her ex. Thanks for holding on to this. I'd put it back on, but it wouldn't matter. You'd have it off before we got far. I think I'm ready to call it a night. Shall we go? People started to whisper and share bits of our conversation. Many of the ladies and some of the men hugged her as we left. Her husband was not very popular. She was still laughing when we got into the car. Did you see his face? I thought he would just disappear. And his girlfriend was looking at him totally differently. If she thought she could, she would have gotten closer to you right there in front of everyone. Of course, if she did anything rude, I would have put her in her place. Wow! Remind me to stay on your good side. The evening was fun, but some moments were better than others. Which moments did you like? The moments when I got to be close to you and we danced together. You're really pretty, and I noticed. The laughter came back. Trust me, when we were close, I noticed that you noticed. It felt nice. If the car wasn't so dark, she would have seen me blush. I'm not sorry for that. I would be hurt if you were. We moved closer. I wondered how much her outfit added to how nice everything felt when I held her. Her hands moved lower. Just as things were getting interesting, the car stopped at her door. We quickly fixed our clothes, but we both noticed the driver smiling at us. He was probably used to seeing that kind of thing. We stood in her entryway, smiling like fools. She gave me a look that I didn't understand, then pushed me away. I'd love to pull you inside, but it's too early for that. You're the first man I've taken seriously in a long time, but we need to take our time. So it's your turn to ask me out on a real date. I acted surprised. To me, this was a real date. A real date that ended with a lot of awkwardness for me. Have you no kindness? She smirked. Does this ever go down? Take it home and keep it ready. You never know when it might be needed. I sighed and gave her a quick kiss on the cheek. When I got into the car, she handed me a handkerchief. The light scent makes me feel nostalgic. I sent her flowers at work on Monday with a note. Please accept this as a sign of my feelings for you. Would you spend Friday at 7 with me? I knew her assistant would read the note aloud. She brought the flowers into the office. Look, he sent these and asked for a date on Friday. If you're not interested, can I have him? Joanne, sweetie, you know I care about you, but if you say something like that again, I might just have to find you another job. My ex needs a new assistant. Understood. If I beg really nicely, will you keep me? You're incredibly valuable to me. But if you say something like that again, got it, boss. So where do you think he'll take you? I'll tell you on Monday. We had some really nice phone chats during the week. I suggested she wear something casual, jeans and a comfy top. The plans I had were quite relaxed. Later, I found out she took her assistant shopping to find the right jeans. I didn't know it, but until that time, she didn't even have jeans in her closet. When I picked her up, I really liked what she chose. The jeans weren't tight, but they fit her well. She wore a light green top that had a nice neckline. It looked great on her. She smiled when she saw me and playfully touched my chest. Do you take care of your look? That's a personal question. You might have to find out yourself. By the way, do you like a smooth style? Her face turned bright red and she laughed. I think I'll keep that secret for now. So, where are we headed? I took her to a little buffet restaurant I found. The menu for that evening was posted near the kitchen. They served food family style, not at individual tables, just long ones that connected almost the whole length of the room. The food came in big bowls, and if you wanted more mashed potatoes or meatloaf, you had to ask someone next to you to pass it. It felt rude to stay quiet, and soon you would find yourself chatting with the people across the table or next to you. Once Angie got used to talking to others, she shared recipes with an elderly lady across from her and makeup tips with a young wife beside her. As for me, I talked about sports and cars, avoiding any talk about politics. She even held a baby while the mother went to the restroom, smiling the whole time. She mentioned she had 2 small grandchildren in California, and she hardly got to see them. She seemed very happy, and when we arrived at the venue, she was simply beaming. That night, an acoustic jazz group was performing. They had a guitar, upright bass, violin, and accordion. The guitar player was a woman, and she and the bass player sang together while the others joined in for the choruses. They played a lot of instrumental pieces that showed off their talents. Some we recognized, but many were new to us. They were even selling old-fashioned CDs, and Angie bought 3. They played some slower songs and invited anyone who wanted to dance. We spent 3 songs dancing on the floor. This time, we made it to her couch. We were just about to get a little too close when she stopped me. I really want this, but I think if we do it, I'll want more all the time. Please, let's take our time. I promise it will be worth it in the end. It's already worth it, sweetie. I can wait, but I'm not sure how much longer I can hold back. Soon, my dear. My dear? I loved her laugh. It made her sound so young. Yes, my dear. I've always wanted to call a man that and really mean it. 2 long weeks later, she called and asked if I liked boats. I guess, I said. I had canoes and kayaks when I was younger, and my dad had a small fishing boat. Will you take me boating on Saturday? I have a boat. Well, my ex had the boat. I made sure to keep it during the divorce just to annoy him, and it worked. It's at a marina, and they take care of it for me, but I've never used it. He never took me out on it. I want to see if it's fun enough to keep or if I should sell it. Sure. If I remember right, they can be a lot of fun. Just send me the directions. Thank you, dear. Don't worry about bringing anything. I'll handle it. Is 8 o'clock too early? Not at all. That would be perfect. It'll still be nice and cool then. The sun can be really strong in the afternoon. We'll make sure to stay cool. See you then. It was a fancy marina, and I had a feeling her boat would be something special. When I finally caught my breath after seeing her outfit, a pair of short shorts and a man's white shirt tied just under her tummy, I followed her to the slips. We walked past a lovely restored wooden boat, and I was surprised when we went to the very end of the docks. I think I just stared. It wasn't a boat. It was like a house on the water. It was 45 feet long and almost completely covered, with a big deck on top and a canopy, too. This is his boat? I asked. No, honey, this is my boat. It's all set to go. Are you ready? There were controls up top and down below. I felt better being above where I could see everything as I focused on getting us away from the dock. Once we were out of the marina, we picked up speed, and we were both surprised by how fast it could go. Once we reached the main channel, we slowed down and cruised along. Angie handed me a cider she knew I liked. I took it, feeling relieved that I wasn't driving a car. I would have crashed it for sure. Even though she wasn't very young, her body looked great. She wore a pretty bikini, bright yellow with white polka dots. The top fit well and made her look nice. I knew she looked good, and I was right. She laughed again. Keep your eyes on the lake, big guy. Sure, that's going to happen. It better. I have fun plans, and they don't include getting lost. I have a map the marina operator gave me. He said the landmarks are easy to find. Plus, we have GPS on our phones and the navigation system. In about an hour, we should arrive. That destination turned out to be a small cove between one of the bigger islands on the lake and a tiny one that was just a bit over 2 acres. This was a mountain lake, the first of many in a chain that leads to the low country, and each lake became more polluted. Here, the water was clear and beautiful, letting us see deep down. It was the kind of water that made you want to dive in on a hot summer day. Once the boat was safely anchored, Angie suggested we swim for a while. I told you I would bring everything, she said with a mischievous smile. I even got you a swimsuit. It's on the bed. Why don't you go change? I hadn't realized how spacious the inside of the boat was. The lounge area was impressive. There was even a good-sized TV mounted on the wall. The bedroom was smaller, just barely enough for the large bed. I saw a small piece of fabric lying on it. Curious, I picked it up and smiled. It was a light blue Speedo, and it looked small even for that style. Getting into it was an experience, and I briefly thought of how difficult it must be to fit something large into a tiny bag. Looking in the bathroom mirror, I was happy about the time I had spent in the gym. I didn't look like I was in my 20s, but I had nothing to be ashamed of. You've looked good since we left the dock. Ready to go? The water felt cold at first, but we soon got used to it, and it was refreshing. Angie seemed comfortable in the water, swimming gracefully like a playful otter. We splashed around, played. She dived down for a long time to tease me. When she surfaced, she had a playful look on her face and swam up to me, playfully nudging against me with a smile. I'm thinking we should find a quiet spot before things get too intense. There aren't many people here, but it's still a public lake. I let her climb the ladder first. When she reached the top, I playfully grabbed her, making her squeal in surprise. Then Angie giggled as she leaned against the ladder steps. Once she caught her breath, she asked me to either finish what I started or let her climb up. I let go. We were lost in each other, a feeling beyond our years. Angie mentioned that her ex didn't have much interest in being close while I enjoyed it, especially when someone appreciated it. It had been a while since I felt this way, and I didn't last as long as I hoped, but it felt great. Eventually, I settled beside her, and I thought I saw tears in her eyes. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I'm feeling great." I didn't know if it would be as wonderful as I remembered. This was so much better. You are the best partner I've ever had. Don't sell yourself short. You are the first person I've been with who showed so much warmth and excitement. We shared a moment that felt truly special. It's the first time I've understood the phrase "as one." She started to cry but held on to me tightly. After a bit, she lay there tracing gentle patterns on my shirt. "I'm glad you don't shave. My ex does, and it doesn't suit him. It makes him look soft. You might look good that way, but I prefer the feel of you as you are. It reminds me that I'm with someone real." I smiled and stroked her hair gently. "I feel the same. You're a strong woman, and you should feel comfortable as you are." I admired her beautiful figure for a moment. I was fully engaged with her. She confessed that it was the first time anyone had treated her that way. "You know, I've seen some movies where things like this happened, and I always wondered what it would be like. Have you ever experienced that?" "Yes, a few times. The key is to make sure your partner is comfortable. Could we maybe try that together one day? Promise me, if I say no, you'll stop." We fell asleep, and when we woke up, we were both very hungry, and it was dark. She put on a robe, I put on my swim shorts, and we moved around the kitchen, making a light meal together. "You don't have to help," she said as I joined in. "I don't have to. Later on, if our relationship grows, I might still help. Sometimes I want you to sit at the counter with a glass of wine while I cook something special for you. It's part of being in a partnership." Her eyes became glassy, and I was afraid I'd said something wrong. But then she smiled. "I'll do my best to enjoy it when you cook. What do you want for the starter?" "This," I said. I teased her with some actions like new couples often do. "Stop or we won't get dinner ready. But I promise, there will be time for that later." We ate a simple meal and cleaned up separately since the shower was too small for both of us. I put on some boxers and she wore a silky robe that just covered her. She played a jazz CD she had, made us some drinks, and we snuggled on the cozy sofa. Suddenly she laughed. He bought this thing thinking it would be clever. He thought there would be no evidence of his trips and he could just go meet someone else. I would never find out. "How long did that last?" I asked. "Until I first noticed it. It had our names on it and didn't cost much to set up for pictures and sound. I let him go 3 times to get enough footage, then I used it to get a better settlement. I made sure he knew I was using it and traded it for a car worth less. The first woman left him after their divorce. Sorry to ask, but why did you marry someone like that?" I could hear the sadness in her voice. "He was a good man when we first got together, but as we became more successful, he became more full of himself. He thought his success meant he could do anything. Age played a role too. Honestly, I think he wanted someone who looked like a flashy car during a midlife crisis. She wasn't smart, but she was clever, and quickly made him question why he was still with a tired old woman when he could have her by his side. When I found them together, it worked out perfectly for her. By that time, I didn't care anymore. She was welcome to him. Instead of people admiring him for his achievements, many thought he was foolish and felt sorry for him. When he realized that, it really crushed his already weak pride for a while. Then she cheated on him, and he was left with nothing from his bad choices. In reality, I ran the company, and he just had to accept it. That sounds a lot like my experience. I thought I was doing well, but she wanted a better life and quickly found someone else once she decided to move on. It hurt me for a long time before I got over it, and made me really nervous about future relationships. As I told you before, it didn't turn out the way she wanted. It's one thing to spoil a young lover, but quite another to give her full control after marrying. The prenuptial agreement was very strict, and by that time she had nowhere to go, so she went along with it. I heard she gets a monthly allowance, and if she spends too much, she is out of money for the rest of the month. I think it will end badly for them in a couple of years. After all, he has shown he doesn't treat people well in relationships. Maybe our exes will end up together after their next divorces. That would be funny. Time for bed. She danced a few times before getting into bed. We had dreams of amazing things, but she fell asleep right away once we got comfortable. Quality is better than quantity. It is a lifestyle I could enjoy. We spent the weekend jumping in and out of bed and the water, returning to the marina just before sunset on Sunday. As we headed back, I asked her if we were only seeing each other. Even in the fading light, I could see her eyes sparkle. I'm thinking of tossing you overboard. I haven't been with another man in nearly a year, and I'm very happy with you. Any more silly questions? No, dear. Good. And what about you? I haven't been with anyone else since 2 weeks before I saw you at the club for the first time. I like what we have very much and have no plans to mess it up. Are we really a couple now? Should I write something official? No, I think it's better if we just talk about it, don't you? Definitely. We stood on the dock for a bit, and then I asked, what happens next? Next, we go home and think about this weekend and what it means for us. After a few days, you should bring some clothes to my place. Maybe Wednesday or Thursday, and we'll see how it goes. Can I do it Monday or Tuesday instead? Not so fast. I need time to think. I've been on my own for a while, so I need to get used to this. So that's what we did. I showed up on Thursday, and she practically pulled me inside. I left on Sunday night and came back on Wednesday. Almost 2 months passed before she wanted to talk. When she did, it usually meant she was talking and I was listening. One time she asked why I did so much for her. Because I enjoy making you happy. It makes me feel good. But if I think you are making a big mistake, I'll tell you. I trust you know the difference between love and not being strong. She was shining with joy. Well, I've decided I like you enough to see if we can be together for a long time. When can you move in for good? Wow, this is quick. I can move most of my stuff tomorrow. A lot of it is already here. I'll keep a few things in storage. Maybe later I'll find a rental agent. Nobody likes an empty house. I took her hands. Okay, let's be clear. You own your home and I own mine, so there are no mortgage worries. I think we should share all the bills equally. I don't want to feel like I'm living off you, especially with all the rumors. And we should also share the chores. You're great at laundry, but I can take care of everything else. I know you like being outside. We can cancel the lawn service next week to balance out the laundry work. Everything else will be split evenly. Should we finish this with a kiss? No, let's do it this way instead. I lifted her onto my shoulder and she was laughing and hitting my back. News spread at her work. Angie just smiled when her ex tried to warn her about me. She put up pictures of us at her desk. Another woman hinted about a ring, but her problems kept her from pushing it further. After 6 months, we had our routine down perfectly. I usually woke up early because I liked the mornings. I would make the coffee and sometimes prepare a light breakfast. Angie typically took care of dinner. I would cut the grass, and then I had an idea for a project which I was willing to pay for. In the end, we shared the expenses, and I built an outdoor kitchen and patio. Angie would change into comfortable clothes and help me out, even though I told her it wasn't necessary. This is our home, and I will be part of every project to make it better, she insisted. It took us almost 3 months, and we were so proud when we finished. The small covered area had a nice gas grill, a charcoal grill, a 4-burner stove built into the granite counters, and it included a small refrigerator and a deep sink. We could have hired someone to do it, but that wasn't the goal. The real purpose was that we worked together, and it was something special. We would often invite friends over, especially after we finished the outdoor space. Angie sometimes hosted her work clients, and I had to convince her to do it. It's better to invite them here than to a cold restaurant. It creates a closer bond. This is your home, and sharing it with them shows a side of you they don't usually see, which can change how they view you, usually for the better. They will feel more relaxed and open to discussing business. But don't let them get into serious talks unless it's very general. Her co-workers were impressed. It was clear that they compared her to her ex, who focused only on business and sometimes went to bars and strip clubs. Once he upset a vendor so much that Angie arranged for him to come over so she could apologize. even asking him to bring his wife. They were supposed to stay at a hotel, but Angie called his wife and asked them to stay with us instead. This visit turned into a regular event, and he would invite us back every 6 months. Those visits often turned into shopping trips for the women and sports events for us, but we always had fun. We once took them out on our boat, and they liked it so much they got one too. Angie always introduced me as her life partner. At first it felt nice, but after a while it started to get on my nerves. About a year after I moved in, I finally met her son and his family. They lived far away and she didn't get to see them often. When he called to visit, she was so excited that she cleaned the house until I told her to relax. "Do you want me to go away so you can have time with them?" She hit me playfully. "You're a part of my life now. They know about you and I've shared pictures. So no, you stay right here." He looked a lot like Angie, but I could see some of his dad in him too, especially in how he acted. He wasn't unfriendly, but he wasn't very warm either. His wife and kids, on the other hand, were a different story. Once there was a little boy who was 9 years old and a girl who was 7. Heather was a beautiful woman from California with golden hair. She had a kind and welcoming nature, just like fresh apple pie. When she and the children saw the garden, they jumped with joy because it was the closest thing to real food they had ever experienced. Without thinking too much, I told them we could visit the farmer's market on Saturday. Angie had bought a house with 3 acres of land when there were not many neighbors around. I wanted to make a garden, but the lady in charge of the neighborhood rules came over as soon as she saw me working. She shouted for me to stop and told me all the rules I was breaking. She warned me that I would get a fine. The funny thing was, Angie's property was not part of that neighborhood. It had been there long before the new homes were built nearby. I just smiled and continued to work on the land, being careful to keep it tidy. After I got the ground ready, Angie helped me put up a white picket fence. From the street, you couldn't even tell what was inside. Angie then took over, insisting we grow lots of tomatoes, lettuce, and green beans. She spent hours online ordering enough seeds to plant a huge garden. I made her pick what would fit in our space, but she quickly wanted to make the garden bigger. The president of the neighborhood association became furious and threatened to tear down our fence. I just smiled and told her that may not be the best plan. So she decided to take us to court. Angie took a day off work to support me in court. The president brought charts and rules, making a convincing argument. Then, it was our turn. Angie presented her property deed, and when the judge read it, she laughed and struck her gavel. "Case dismissed." We could hardly believe it when the judge told the angry woman that since our property was not part of her neighborhood, we could do whatever we wanted, as long as it was reasonable. The judge even had to warn her to be quiet or risk a weekend in jail. The next month, Angie had a mischievous look in her eyes when she asked me to help her make a scarecrow. While I worked on that, she went shopping. When the scarecrow was ready, it wore clothes just like the neighborhood presidents, even a big straw hat like the one she wore in summer. Angie might have made the scarecrow's backside a little bigger than it should be, using 2 bales of hay to fill out those pants. She smiled widely and said, "I read about someone who did this to get back at a rules enforcer. I thought it was a perfect idea." Every time the president drove by our house, she would see the scarecrow. The other neighbors found it hilarious, but were careful not to let her see them laughing. When her term ended, a new president came in who was much nicer to the homeowners. He even let everyone vote to allow small gardens in their backyards if they were properly fenced in. Suddenly, we got to know our neighbors much better as they came to us for help. I had gone a bit overboard and bought a big garden tiller that just sat there after I worked on our yard, so I offered to help. Angie would sit with the wives on the patio or inside while the guys and I struggled in the hot sun. Soon, they set up a Facebook group to share tips and show off their vegetables. If they had extra, they shared it with the group. Very little went to waste. Heather showed up on Saturday without her son, Junior. When I asked, she said he wanted to talk to his mom alone. Something felt off. We piled into her rental car since it had the car seats in it. Heather seemed to enjoy the market, even though she didn't smile much. The kids were running around, excited to see everything. Besides fresh vegetables, there were local artisans too, potters, painters, and jewelry makers. There was even a man who would write a poem for customers for $10 and print it out on his laptop. I didn't see the point, but he said he made $200 to $300 a day, not bad for a writer. The kids found a face painter and begged to get their faces painted. Heather hesitated, but I smiled and pointed at the kids. He's a lion and she's a tiger, full face. I went to talk to one of the artisans, and a few minutes later Heather came over with the kids, their faces painted beautifully. He smiled at us. Does Angie know you're out having fun with this lovely lady? Heather turned a little red, but then smiled. Mom knows, but if a girl can't trust her father-in-law, who can she trust? That surprised me, and I had to blink a few times. The kids wanted some crystals, and Heather looked a bit shy, but Bob smiled. Now you'll see how nice it is to have a generous father-in-law. If he's like most grandfathers, he'll buy his grandkids anything they want. This dust was really bad. I had forgotten how bad it got this time of year. Before Heather could say no, Lynette spotted some earrings shaped like small fairies holding tiny crystals. Jeremiah picked out a necklace with a beautiful crystal. It was supposed to bring good luck and keep him safe. Lynette heard what Bob said and hugged my knees. Thank you, Grandpa. Jeremiah thought he was too cool for a hug, but he smiled and said, Thanks, Gramps. I picked up Lynette, and she was happy in my arms. Bob was showing Heather a ring with a crystal and gold around it, making it look like a flower. I bought it for her without thinking, not even blinking when Bob told me the price. I can't take this, she said. I smiled back. I know you haven't been around us much, but trust me, it's not wise to say no to grandfathers. It suits you. Bob told me it had been in his case for a year, just waiting for someone special. Don't fight the magic. I still held Lynette, but now she was asleep. Heather took one of Lynette's hands, and Jeremiah took the other as we walked. I was so proud. I felt like I was floating until we reached the car. The kids went outside before we hit the highway. I waited a few minutes before I began to speak. I'm a pretty smart guy, and I can see something is wrong. Why don't you tell me what's going on so that Angie and I can help? She wanted to argue, but decided against it. Then she started to talk. We don't have any money. It took everything we had just to get here. I wondered what Junior was telling Angie while she shared her sad story. Junior had been fired in a bad way and was struggling to find a new job. They had always lived well, but the money disappeared quickly. He sounded a lot like his dad, but I didn't say anything. They lost their house, her rented car, and had to pull the kids out of private school. It hurt him deeply to come here, but we had no choice. We asked his father first, but because of his choices. She scoffed in annoyance. He couldn't help. Mom is our last hope. You shouldn't worry too much about Angie. She won't let her grandkids go without, and neither will I. What does he need? I'm not sure. A short loan, maybe. Something to help us until we find work. He doesn't want me to get a job, but if I find one before he does, too bad for him. I knew Angie. She wouldn't let her child and his family go hungry. I also knew she wouldn't just hand Junior money blindly, not if he was anything like his father. He'd get something, but there would be conditions. When I asked Heather how much money they had, she blushed and stayed quiet. I made her pull into the parking lot of my bank and took out $1,000 in cash, handing her the envelope. Don't argue, just put this in your purse and use it how you need. And if you ever mention paying me back, I will be very unhappy. You'll lose your favorite daughter-in-law title quickly, okay? I drove to give her time to let her feelings out. She was calm by the time we got back to the house. Angie and Junior were waiting in the living room. Lynette ran in and jumped onto her lap. Grandma, I'm a tiger. Look what Grandpa got me. Aren't they cute? I noticed Junior tensed, but Angie just smiled as she hugged the child. They're adorable. Grandpa has never gotten me something this nice. That wasn't exactly true if you counted the ring I had hidden in the shed. I just hadn't found the right moment to give it to her yet. It's because I'm the youngest and a girl. Grandpas are supposed to do things like that. At least that's what Jenny says. Your friend Jenny seems very wise. Jeremiah, did you get anything? He smiled and took a necklace out from under his shirt. Grandpa's friend said it would keep bad spirits away. Mommy got something too. She shyly showed Angie a ring. Angie's eyes went wide and tears rolled down her cheeks. From now on, I'll have to keep an eye on your grandfather or you'll have too many shiny things. Linny, do you and Jerry want to help me make cupcakes? Soon, they each grabbed a hand and pulled her to the kitchen. Junior stared at me for a moment. You're not their grandfather, Heather gasped. I just looked at him calmly. No, I'm not by blood, but does that matter to them? Does it hurt a child to think there are more people who care for them? Where's your dad, Benny? Is he too busy for his only grandchildren, his way to live on? Do you know how special that is? Maybe not, but you should learn. I kissed Heather on the cheek and walked outside. I went to the garden shed and sharpened tools for 40 minutes. My dad taught me that hoes, shovels, and tools like that are just like knives. If they are sharp, they work better. After I finished sharpening, I worked on the pruners. By the time I was done, they were sharp enough to cut hair. There was a soft knock, and Heather asked if she could come in. I nodded, and she stood there a bit awkwardly. Please don't blame him. He's facing a big failure, the struggle to take care of his family. I understand that, but that means you shouldn't snap at the hand trying to help. His dad made bad choices. That's not Junior. It's fault. His bright future with a wonderful woman slipped away and he can't get it back. He needs to accept what he chose and try not to repeat it. Junior needs to make some choices too. Angie has told me many times how much she misses you, especially her grandchildren. Heather, she will take care of her family. I know her well enough for that. But she won't just give him money and hope it works out. She has wanted you to live here for years, and this is her chance. I bet she offers him a job. He's her heir, not me. I've told her I want no part of her business. It's not mine to manage. By the way, where are you staying? We're at the Marriott for the night. After that, I have no idea. I might have an idea, but I need to talk to your mother-in-law first. Come on, it's almost dinner time, and I'm sure Jeremiah doesn't want to miss meals. She gave me a big hug. I wish they were your grandchildren. I'd sleep a lot better at night. I looked around the kitchen and saw the mess from letting small children try baking. I made a choice. Tonight, we'll grill. I asked Heather what the kids like to eat and sent her in my car to the market. Junior came along with her. I wondered what they would talk about. Angie had put the kids down for a nap after cleaning them up, so we took the chance to tidy up the kitchen. Did you have fun? Her face lit up. I wished I had taken a video. Heather helped until she went to find you. Junior went to see his dad for a bit. Tears filled her eyes. I wish we could keep them. Lynette really likes you, honey. She told me Grandpa Reggie was going to cook the corn you picked for her tonight. Is it okay if she calls you Grandpa? I feel about the same for that as I do when you call me honey. Seriously, it's a bit much. She laughed. Well, maybe I should call you something else. How does Sweetie sound? Just stick to honey. Okay, she said, just before hugging me tight. We were in the middle of a kiss when we heard giggles. Linny had woken up. Before she could move, I scooped her up and showered her with kisses for a moment. Grandpa, are we going to cook the corn? Yes, we are. Come with me. I had put the corn in ice water earlier and it was ready. I lifted Linny onto a big chair behind the prep table and showed her how to pull back the leaves enough to put the butter inside, then close them tightly. I tied them up carefully, and they were set to go. By then, Jerry was awake and helping out. Their mom came in and they rushed to her, eager to know if she had their favorites, hot dogs and burgers. She did, along with steaks, chops, and some chicken breasts. Jerry helped me rub the chicken well and wrap it in foil, while Mom rubbed the steaks and chops, letting them sit to warm up a bit. Angie took Linny to help with the sides, coleslaw, big steak fries, and marinated zucchini ready for the grill. The cupcakes were on display waiting for dessert. Junior chose to stay with his dad, and I think Heather felt relieved about that. I grilled enough for 3 big meals, knowing they would want to try a bit of everything. Linny had 3 bites of chicken, 3 bites of steak, some fries, and a whole ear of corn, giggling as she peeled off the charred leaves. Jerry ate a hot dog, half a chop, and some steak, skipping everything else except for an ear of corn. Then it was time for a cupcake. Linny brought one to me, bursting with pride. The frosting was stacked high. I made this one for you, Grandpa. She smiled so big and I kissed her cheek. Thank you, sweetie. It looks great, she said with a nervous smile. She watched closely as I finished every bite of my food. When Heather told everyone they could stay the night and that baths were ready, they looked so happy. After they changed into their pajamas, I held Linny while Angie held Jerry. We gently rocked him until he fell asleep. They woke up when we laid them in their beds and wanted us to take turns reading them a story. Angie held my hand tightly the whole time, beaming with joy. Heather was in the living room enjoying a glass of wine. Thank you. You have no idea how nice it is to finally relax. I remember, Angie replied. Junior was a really active child and needed a lot of attention. But now that you're here, you have built-in babysitters. You might get tired of coming over to help out. That might take some time, but I'm glad to be here. It all depends on your son. Angie sat next to her and gave her a friendly hug. I know, dear. I'm working on it. Later that night, as we lay in bed, we had a deep talk. Do you know what's going on with them? I asked. I know most of it. I got really angry when I found out. They should have come home sooner. We would have helped them, she said. I think your son has as much pride as your ex. What did you talk about when I was with Heather and the kids? He has this scheme to make money that he wants me to invest in. $1 million. I do have money, but I wouldn't just give it away. I told him I need to check it out before I decide, and he got upset. They're broke, and this is their last night in that hotel. They can move in here, but he doesn't like that idea. Can I suggest something? I'm listening. The people renting my house just moved out. I knew it was only a 6-month stay, but now it's empty. Let them live there for free. It will give them some space while they sort things out. Maybe we can find Heather something to do while he figures things out. I love you, she suddenly said, and it made me grin. It's sometimes hard to get her to say it. Whenever we got close to talking about marriage, she would shy away, mentioning the age difference. It started to bother me, and one day I couldn't take it anymore. But dear, I'm 7 years older. I lost my temper. She squirmed and protested. Ow, that hurts! Who do you think you are? Her words stopped as she squealed, and I felt a bit embarrassed for being too rough. Every time you bring this up, it's going to lead to more trouble, you understand? And I'm not going to let it go easily. You need to wake up and realize that your age doesn't matter. I chose you. If you think this means we won't work out, maybe I should just walk away now. She was still crying on the couch when I passed her with my suitcase. Her eyes widened, and I could tell she didn't believe what I was saying. Please, wait, I'll reach out, but it might take a while. I need some space to figure out if this is worth it or not. She begged as I stepped out the door. I owned part of a construction company and also managed jobs in emergencies. I decided it was an emergency and spent a week out of town to get a new office building started. The unions were causing trouble, and some suppliers were caving under their pressure and delaying our materials. I was frustrated, so I pulled all our workers off the job and sent them to other tasks. 2 days later, a for sale sign went up in front of the building, surprising everyone. The unions were outraged, but I was in my rights and told the newspapers and local news the truth, backing it with facts. Soon, the unions faced pressure from workers who were out of jobs, and politicians started talking about permits and investigations. The suppliers were shocked when I canceled almost $2 million in orders. We have a contract. You do, but the fine print says if you're late more than 3 times in a month, we can look for other suppliers. Have a good day. They tried to paint me as the bad guy, but the public saw through it. A month later, we returned to the suppliers with better deals, and the unions were much more willing to meet their new goals. My partners thought I was smart, but I was just angry and needed to take it out on someone. 9 days later, I walked out of the trailer that was our construction office to see Angie sitting in her car. She looked scared but determined. As I approached, she got out, and I felt both of us were nervous. When she reached me, she stood there unsure for a moment, then suddenly jumped into my arms. I finally gave in. I glanced at the engineers and production assistants, and they all quickly decided they needed coffee at the diner next door. I locked the door behind them. I'm sorry for losing my temper. I was really frustrated, and it just happened. I'm asking you, if we're going to be together, to please stop doing that. By now, I hope you understand how little that number matters to me. I think I finally understand. I forgive you, as long as you never do it again. All I can promise is that if you come close to saying it again, I'll remind you how it ended last time. Fair enough, now come home. You must comfort me with kisses. I couldn't help but smile. I'll make it a 2-for-1 deal to say I'm sorry. We sat and talked, sharing kisses until the crew felt brave enough to come back. I looked at my assistant. You're on your own for the rest of the project, Mark. You've shown you can do it, so think of this as a test. If you do well, we could use another project manager. And Mark, no nonsense from anyone, all right? They will test you hard. Stand firm the first time and don't back down, understood? Good. See you at the office. He came in a week early and saved $20,000. He had 10 of our people working with him, and I told him to give everyone 1,000 as a bonus, making sure he delivered the money himself. I gave him 3. Angie and I slowly got back to where we were, but I wasn't as happy as I should have been. The fact that she avoided talking about marriage really bothered me. If she wanted to wait, I was fine with it, as long as I could see a happy ending. I remembered my first marriage, before things went wrong, and realized I liked being married. I liked having a promise and a document to show the world that we were together. Now her son was around, and she was really tense. 2 weeks later, she told her son the bad news. She had looked into his opportunity, and it seemed to be a scam. Angie insisted he work for her for now, just to earn some money. He didn't want to at first, until Heather lost patience and got her own job. She went to work for a construction company as an office assistant. The pay was better than average, not because of who she was, but because my partners and I decided early on to find the best people and pay them fairly. Sarah was in charge of all office work, and one of the first things she did was suggest a free daycare for our employees. You guys don't know how much childcare can cost, especially for a single mother. If we do this, we'll keep our employees for a long time. She was a single mother herself, and her part of the startup was supported by an inheritance from her grandmother. David and I had talked about starting our own business, but it was mostly talk. She had been the office manager for our old company and pushed us to get started. We were so thankful that we named the business SDR Construction after Sarah, David, and Reggie. David was an engineer and I handled construction. We both had good names in our fields, but some of our clients were not happy with our old company's management, so they decided to work with us instead. In just 10 years, we built a successful construction business known for great work at fair prices. Our old company was very upset when we left and took a few people with us. They even threatened to sue us. Our lawyer advised us that they might do such things while he sorted out the papers and said we should tell them to get lost. We let Sarah handle it because she dealt with a lot of issues there. She said it turned out to be one of the best times of her life. When I got to the office before Heather, she would bring the kids to me before they went to daycare. One month I arrived to see everyone smiling at me. On my desk was a big mug with pictures of Linny and Jeremiah on it. The other side said, "Best grandfather ever." But the one that touched me the most was a smaller mug next to it. It had a picture of Heather and said, "Best father-in-law ever." I put them on a shelf where I could see them first thing in the morning, right next to a picture of Angie and me. Heather was called into Sarah's office, and they told her that her job would change. Now, she would be running errands for the company. They explained that she needed a good vehicle, so she picked out an SUV that could fit everything. After she stopped crying, she took me with her to the Ford dealership, where she chose the same model I had, a 4-door sports model with a small truck bed. Angie smiled as Heather went on and on about it. As I grew closer to Heather and the kids, her husband Ben started to pull away. One day he came to confront me, apparently to warn me. "Stay away from my grandchildren, they are not yours." I think my smile surprised him. "Have you told them that?" "Oh, right. For that, you would need to spend time with them, wouldn't you? How much time have you really spent with them since they arrived? Have you taken them anywhere or just sat at home watching them play? They say you haven't, and whether I am around or not, that needs to change. If you want to be part of their lives, the best way to do it is to include them." Ben's tough demeanor faded quickly. Casey doesn't care for them much. "Then it's time for you to make a choice, your new girlfriend or your grandchildren. That should be an easy decision, but I can't know your priorities. Just to be clear, I will step back if Angie or the kids' parents ask me to, but I doubt that will happen. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a play set to put together." "Want to help?" I must have made a good impression because he followed me to the house. Angie and Heather were shocked when he stepped out, and the kids ran to both of us. It was a lively scene, but since I own a construction company, I was used to being busy. Once Benny got the hang of things, he started to fit in. An hour later, he was pushing Jeremiah on the swing as I pushed Linny. The ladies took charge while we relaxed with a beer and watched. Benny had tears in his eyes. "I've made so many bad choices in my life. From what I hear, I can't argue with you. We don't know each other well yet, but today has shown me a different side of you. We all make mistakes, but we learn from them. So, how about coming to our weekly cookout on Sunday?" Heather took a lot of pictures that she posted on Facebook later that night. There were photos of Benny and me tightening bolts while the kids waited excitedly. The last photos showed us each pushing a child with a caption that read, "Grandpa's rule." After everyone left, Angie couldn't contain her excitement. "You're in for a great night. How did you do it?" "I didn't do anything special. You know I speak my mind. Benny deserves to be part of their lives if he can. It would break my heart if I lost them." Just then, she started crying, which almost spoiled the moment. Thankfully, she calmed down by bedtime. A sort of peace had settled between Benny and me. He came over every other Sunday for a barbecue. Sometimes he helped, but mostly he played with the kids. However, Bubblegum Barbie noticed he was pulling away and gave him an ultimatum, which did not go well. She moved out of the townhouse within 2 weeks. She took all her clothes and jewelry, but had a meltdown when he said she couldn't have the sports car he'd leased for her. Finally, when she wouldn't stop talking about it, he told her she could have the car and the 27 payments that were left. Heather was happy at her job. They treated her just like everyone else, even though her father-in-law was one of the owners. That only happened a few times at the start, but she handled it well. After that, everyone complained to her just like they did to the other workers, and she just smiled and rolled with it. I looked at my life and saw there were only 2 things that could make it perfect. One would be the day Angie and I walked down the aisle. The other would be when Junior finally settled down and faced reality. For some reason, he thought all his problems were my fault. Angie and I had some tough talks about the way he treated me, and when Heather tried to talk to him about it, things got worse. We ended up having an honest discussion, and the conclusion was clear. If he didn't like his life here, he had 2 choices. He had to decide whether to improve his life or leave, but she and the kids were staying put. He crashed on his dad's couch for a few nights. Eventually, his dad told him to toughen up and go back to his family. He went home, but he was grumpy and snapped at his kids often. Heather was very frustrated, and then things got even worse. Angie fired him. This was really hard for her, and she spent several nights crying while holding on to me. She had started to trust him, and he had been doing better at work, but he still felt angry inside and wanted to return to California. Heather was not keen on that idea. "Why would we go back? I've already moved our family once, and I don't want to do it again." She sighed deeply. "You need to think this through. You're making more money now than you did at your best job in California. Your parents want you to take over the family business in a few years. I love my job here. We don't owe money for a house or car, so we can live well. The biggest thing is the kids. They are so happy here. They love your mom and think both grandfathers could do amazing things. What would they think if we just left? They really only have one grandfather. The other man is just someone mom is with." Heather slapped him hard. "Don't you ever say that again in front of me? We are living here for free in the house of that loser." He got me a car, and if I called him for anything, he would help right away. Lynette told me she wants to build houses just like her grandpa. I think Jeremiah will be great in business. He loves visiting Grandpa Benny at work. We have a bright future here. He thought about this for a few days. Then he used his job to access company funds and borrowed $200,000 to invest in a plan he had always wanted. He thought he could make a lot of money quickly, return the money, and have enough to go back to California in style. But the plan failed, and he lost all the money, leaving many investors disappointed. The accountants discovered the issue 3 weeks later. When Angie found out, she fainted. Her assistant called me and Ben. They called for an ambulance, and she was taken to the hospital for care. We all met at the emergency room. The doctor told us she was being treated for severe shock and needed to stay overnight. Ben and I walked around in the hospital for 4 hours, and he went home only when his new girlfriend arrived to pick him up. She was younger than him, but not by much. She helped keep him in line, and the grandkids adored her. He wouldn't admit it yet, but he was so in love with her it was hard to think clearly. One day, while we were cooking on the grill and Angie and Vicky were watching the kids play in our new pool, he told me he was tired of living in a condo. He wanted a house. Vicky was helping him out, he said, just to get a woman's opinion. But what he really meant was that he planned to buy whatever she chose. I had a fleeting thought that he might get married before me, and it bothered me. I never left the hospital. I slept in a chair next to her bed. She woke up around 3, and I spent another 2 hours holding her as she cried before the day shift arrived and gave her more medicine. That afternoon, she was finally discharged, and Heather came to take her home. When they wheeled her out, Heather saw how weak she looked and broke down in tears. I ended up driving them home while they hugged in the back seat. Once we got her settled at home, Heather filled me in on what was happening in her life. "He's gone, Dad. I came home and the bedroom was a mess. He packed his clothes and left. I don't know if he'll come back." She had started calling Angie Mom after about 6 months. Her parents had moved to Portugal, so when she was lucky, she saw them every 4 years. That made us the go-to parents, the ones she could talk to. She smiled when she first called me Dad. "I call Angie Mom, and you're the best father figure I've had, so unless you mind, I'm calling you Dad." I didn't mind at all. Heather checked their bank accounts and found that he had cleared them out. There had been a decent amount in savings. She mentioned that someday I might need to ask them to leave, and they needed a backup plan. Angie later told me they were actually saving for a down payment for a house that I would help build on her land. Heather was really upset and stayed with us for most of the week. The kids enjoyed having her around, but eventually they wanted to go back home. After 2 weeks, Angie got mad enough to track his car with GPS, a car that belonged to her work. The app showed him in a small town in Texas. Ben and I flew down to find him. We spotted him in a tiny bar, talking loudly about how great he was at business. As long as he was buying drinks, everyone seemed to agree with him. Ben tapped him on the shoulder. "Son, it's time to come home." He spun around on his bar stool, eyes wide in surprise. Then he saw me. "Here to gloat, huh? You took my family away from me. I nearly threw up every time Heather said, 'Reggie did this,' or 'You have to see what Reggie got for the kids.'" He then turned to his dad. "And you just sat there and let him take everything. What kind of man are you?" Benny looked at him for a long moment. "You know what Reggie took from me? Nothing. I lost everything long before I even heard his name. It took me some time, but I finally figured things out. I'm actually closer to your mother now than I was when we were together. She's a friend now, and for a long time I didn't have any friends at all. But you know what? This isn't about Reggie, or your mother, or even me. It's about you and what you've done. Now step up, get off that stool, and come home to deal with things." I didn't see it coming, or I would have reacted. He jumped off the bar stool and hit his dad right in the face. Benny went down hard. He stood there smiling, swaying a bit. "Want to go, old man?" I smiled back. "Why, yes, I do." I'd love to say it was a big fight and we battled all over the bar before going outside, but it didn't happen that way. Junior didn't know anything about fighting. I did. My dad was a champion boxer when he was young and learned a lot in the Navy. He taught me some fighting skills just in case I needed them. Those skills helped me a lot in my early days on the job. Sometimes you can't talk your way out of a situation. Sometimes you just have to take action. With Junior, I felt like I had to take action. He threw a wild punch and I caught his arm, using my hip to throw him off balance. He flew across the floor. He had some determination, so he got right back up and rushed at me again. I avoided him again and used his speed to push his face into the bar. I could have done this all day, but then a deputy tapped me on the shoulder. "You can stop now. We'll handle this from here." The bartender had called the police when Junior knocked down his dad. Another deputy pulled Junior up to put handcuffs on him while the EMTs checked on Benny. He seemed to be hurt and was taken to the local hospital for a concussion check. We didn't need to press charges. The bartender and the police were eager to help. They charged Junior with disturbing the peace, damaging property. That was a bit my fault. When I tossed him, he landed on a chair that broke. 2 counts of assault and 1 count of assault on a police officer when he kicked a deputy. She tapped her baton near his legs, and he quickly became more cooperative. His bail was set at $25,000, and neither Benny nor I wanted to post it. He stayed in jail for 3 weeks before his first hearing. Following the public defender's advice, he pleaded guilty to lesser charges. He was found guilty, given a 1-year sentence, and released for time already served along with probation. He also had to pay for the chair he broke and a $5,000 fine. Angie hurried down and paid it, but only if the state let him do his probation at home. This really limited his freedom, and it made him even more upset. 3 weeks after he returned home, Heather asked him to leave. "You're not the man I married anymore. Why aren't you happy? You had everything, and you didn't see how good it was." They were at home with the kids nearby. He got angry and looked like he might hit her, but she just laughed. "Go ahead, but as soon as you stop swinging, you'd better run. Dad will find you no matter where you go, and I'd love to see him catch you." He was out of the house in 3 hours, but came back 2 days later because Angie warned him that if he didn't check in with his parole officer on time, he'd be in serious trouble. By that time, Benny had found a place and let him stay in his condo until the sale went through. Heather was serious about her threats, and when she served him with divorce papers and asked for temporary child support, he lost it. Angie had made it clear he couldn't continue working at the company, so he was without a job. If he didn't find work soon, he would break the rules of his probation. I thought about everything as Heather cried on my shoulder while Angie comforted her from the other side. Angie had been down for nearly 2 months. Heather was stressed, and even the kids were feeling the pressure. It made them all more protective of each other. After we got Heather settled in bed, I told Angie I needed to go out. Out? Now? It's pretty late. This won't take long. Just make sure you don't take all the blankets when I get back. Angie loved to steal the covers. Many times I woke up cold while she was all wrapped up. I had tried a few times to fix it and even kept an extra blanket nearby. She would always say sorry the next day, but it was hard for her to stop smiling. Should I get the heating pad? I won't be long. She falling asleep almost before I could start the car. I drove right over to Benny's condo and knocked on the door. Junior opened it just a little, saw me, and tried to slam it shut. I kicked the door open hard and sent him stumbling back. I stepped inside and sat down while he struggled to stand. If you want to fight, go ahead. No one is here to help you, and I'll take you down easily. I'll call the police. Go ahead. I'll be on you before you can even dial 9. We need to have a talk about your future. First, let's recap. You lost everything in California and came back home. Your mom was thrilled, already planning her future, and gave you a decent job. We gave you a home, cars to use, and took care of the kids whenever you let us. You should have felt like you were living the dream. Heather even said it was the happiest time in her marriage. You fell into a tough situation and thought you were invincible. Was that enough for you? No, it wasn't, so you took money from your parents and came up with a silly plan to seem smarter than everyone else. But you ended up throwing away a good business that was worth so much more than you could ever earn on your own. You've given up on a woman who is amazing and 2 wonderful kids. Is that about right? So what do you want, Junior? What will make you happy? Do you want everyone around you to be sad? If so, you are doing a great job at it. This is your one chance. If you turn it down, I'll leave. Just so you know, a woman like Heather won't stay single for long. A good man will see how special she is and will want to make her happy. Maybe you want to go to jail. That might open your eyes. Here's a hint. You're weak, and jailbirds love to target easy victims. I was letting out all the things I kept inside because I cared about his family, but now it was time to be honest. I started walking back and forth while he sat on the couch, looking uneasy. Finally, I stopped right in front of him. So, what's it going to be? Are you going to step up or show that you can't handle this? Suddenly, he started crying. I thought it was a bit funny and sat down while he let it all out. I don't have a job and no one here wants to hire me. If I leave the state, I'll break my probation. If I don't find a job soon, I'll be in trouble. Even a small traffic ticket could cause me problems. I will never get my family back. My parents can't stand me, and you must be enjoying this. I gave him a hard slap. Are you done with the pity party? I'm going to help you even though it's not easy for me. But I'm not really doing it for you. It's for the family I care about. I tossed one of my business cards to him. You be at that address on Monday at 8. If you're not, I'm done with you. Don't wear a suit. You probably won't need it anytime soon. Wear sturdy jeans, good boots, and a work shirt. You're starting in construction. You'll work hard and you won't complain or cry. You'll do what you're told. I'll know if you don't. I walked toward the door. Oh, and 25% of your pay will be taken out each week and sent to Heather. You still have kids to support, and if you ever want your family back, this is a good start. As I drove home, I wondered if anything I said made any difference. We would see on Monday. I smiled when I saw Angie all wrapped up like a mummy. I once told her that she must have been a lizard in another life because I had never met anyone so unemotional. She just smiled. Lizards like to sun on warm rocks. I prefer to cuddle with a man who makes me feel warm inside. I was shocked to see him in the office on Monday. I put him with a team working nearby and told the supervisor and team leads not to baby him, but to take it easy on him. Give him a chance. He really needs this job. Later, I learned that he cried when he got home that first day because his body hurt so much. He could hardly move the next morning, but he still came back. A month later, he had gotten used to the hard work and developed real muscles for the first time. They tried him on different tasks, and he seemed to really be good at hanging and finishing drywall. I would see him from my office sometimes, getting out of a work truck, looking white and dusty from all the drywall dust. Heather had moved to payroll and saw his name and his first paycheck. Then the money showed up in her account. She stormed into my office. "Is this your doing, Dad?" Somebody needed to give him a job, and I didn't want you to have to visit him at the county jail. I just went to see him and asked nicely. I find that hard to believe. More likely you scared him into showing up. I did nothing of the sort. If you didn't scare him, it's probably because he's more scared of you than I thought. Do you think he will stay with it? Only time will tell, sweetie. Now go get the kids from daycare so I can get my goodbye kisses. Only if the big girl gets to kiss him first. They would see each other in the hallways now and then, but they hardly talked. Then one day, he asked her if he could have lunch with his kids at the picnic tables outside the daycare. She almost said no and gave him a serious talk on how to behave, but she decided to join them, just to be safe. Things were going well until Linny crawled into his lap and showed him the little hard hat I had gotten her. Look, Daddy, I got a hard hat too. We're both going to be builders, just like Grandpa. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he hugged her tightly, then hugged Jeremiah as well. He turned to Heather and thanked her in a shaky voice for being so nice. A couple of tears fell from her eyes, too. He always made sure to stop by for lunch if he was working nearby. He would ask Heather to join them if she had time, and she always made time. He moved out of his father's townhouse and found a small apartment close to the office. I let him use one of the company trucks to get around, and he was very careful about when he drove it. Since it was a 4-door truck, he could take the kids when Heather allowed it. 6 months went by, and Heather came into my office and closed the door. Daddy, can I talk to you for a minute? Of course, sweetie. What's on your mind? Benny. I knew she meant her Benny, so I nodded. We've been talking a lot lately. He comes to our house at least twice a week for dinner. I can see he is changing, and I need to ask a favor. He really wants to talk to his parents. Can I bring him over on Sunday? His parents had given up on him a long time ago. Angie didn't know I had helped him find a job, and I stayed quiet about it. I warned Heather, and she mentioned that he had a new job and was now helping out with the kids. Let me talk to your mother first. I won't surprise her. I'll see how she feels and let you know. Angie and Ben were not too sure about the idea, but they agreed to try it for Heather and the kids. He showed up looking really nervous. The kids jumped all over him, excited about the new pool with a water slide, talking non-stop. We left them alone, and after dinner he asked if he could speak to his parents. I took the kids and Heather out for ice cream. We came back in 45 minutes. When we returned, he was gone. Angie had tears in her eyes, and Ben looked a bit worried. He apologized, and I think he really meant it. He promised to pay us back, but we told him if he truly meant that, he should do good things for the kids. We made it clear that we could not let him work for us again, at least not until enough time passed for us to trust him. He said he didn't expect that much forgiveness and promised he would never let us down again. I hope he's honest. Angie shocked me by being a bit more firm. I listened to him and I told him words are just words. If he wants our forgiveness and respect, he needs to earn it, both with us and with his family. Benny has a lot to work on, and I hope he steps up. Later, she surprised me with some more news. He only had good things to say about you. You've really made a difference to him, and right now, you might be his role model. Then, to my surprise, he gave me some advice. He told me I should get your ring on my finger and stop waiting. If I am so scared of a serious commitment, maybe I should let you go to find someone else. I'm starting to like that guy. She poked me. Stop it. This is serious. Yes, it is. While we're talking about this, do you ever plan to marry me? She went quiet and I sighed, turning away. A few moments later, she cuddled closer to me. Honey, I've been really scared. You might not see it now, but when Ben was Junior's age, he was a lot like him. I put up with things I shouldn't have for years. I still have nightmares about the person I was back then. I promised myself it would never happen again. I wouldn't let a man have that much power over me. I thought about getting up, but she held on tightly. I'll leave tomorrow. I never saw it coming, but she slapped me. It hurt, and my jaw felt sore. You will not. What I'm trying to say is that I've changed. You have more influence over me right now than anyone else ever has. Your smile, your touch, and the way you light up when you do something nice for me means so much. I really look forward to those moments when you shine, especially when Heather brings the kids by. So, clumsily, I'm trying to tell you that if you ask me a certain question, the answer might surprise you. I could see you holding your breath, as if waiting for something. I shrugged and said, "Let me think about it. I'll let you know tomorrow, at the latest." You seemed to freeze for a moment, then I heard you take a deep breath. I quickly turned and covered your face with kisses. When I finally let you breathe, I jumped out of bed. "Stay right there!" It's lucky Heather and the kids weren't around. They might have seen me rush by the window in my birthday suit. I dashed to the garden shed and searched until I found the box I had hidden behind a bag. I figured you would never look there. You were always scared of spiders and refused to go in there alone. When I returned, you were sitting up in bed, looking younger than your age. "I have a special surprise for you. There's a secret word you need to say to get it. Want to see what it is?" You nodded, and I smiled as I opened the box. I knew you would never have chosen that particular ring, but I thought it was perfect for you, and you weren't paying for it either. Your eyes widened, and you tried to get out from under the covers. "You don't want it? I thought you'd like this. I can always put it away." But you reached out and playfully tapped my chest. "Give it to me." "No, you haven't said the magic word. Want to try again? You're terrible at this." "Yes, I would be so happy to be Mrs. Reginald Wilkes. Now give me what belongs to me." I made you kiss me first. Then I gently placed the beautiful ring on your finger. You sighed, and then you held me tightly and cried. I held you back and cried a little too. After a few minutes, you jumped out of bed and grabbed your phone. "I need to call Heather, and Vicky, Barb, Alice, and—" I gently took the phone from you. "You can't." "Why not?" "Because it's 1:30 in the morning. They will be excited for you, but not so excited if you call them now. Let's just go back to bed." This time, you pushed me down onto the bed. I laughed. "You are the best, the gilf of the year for 2 years running," I thought, as you playfully grabbed me. By then I was 48 and she was 54. She liked to remind me that she was only 6.5 years older, but you would have thought we were 2 teenagers that night. We didn't wake up until 9 when Heather came by. Angie got out of bed, opened the door, and instead of talking, she just waved her hand in Heather's face. Then Heather yelled, which startled Angie, so I got up and made coffee. I was halfway through making breakfast before they calmed down enough to talk. As soon as they finished eating, they pulled out their phones. I decided to leave quickly, called Ben, and we took the boat out. I told him about the night as we fished off the platform made for that. After he caught a base, he smiled and held out his hand. "Congratulations, you've got a great woman. But if you ever treat her badly, I might not be able to fight you, but I'm a good shot. Just keep your guns locked up, I think I can manage." He called from the boat to say good luck to her. He finished the call, still laughing. "I'm going to be your best man. Heather and Vicky will be bridesmaids, and even if they're a bit old for it, Jerry and Linny will be the ring bearer and flower girl. Do you think you can stay here until after the wedding?" "I will do my best." 16 years later, Angie and I, along with Ben and Vicky, proudly watched as Lynette received her master's in construction management and engineering, earning both degrees at the same time. Her thesis for the management degree was called Building a Box. She even used part of it for her graduation speech. She shared how she started by making her own keepsake box at 9, complete with hinges and a handle. She still had that box. Then she talked about building a birdhouse, a doghouse, a playhouse, a few small sheds, and even a vacation bungalow that she had designed for the family. My grandfather Wilkes taught me about building, helping me from the keepsake box to the bungalow. He said that everything you build is like a box. They just get bigger and more complicated, so you need to make the best box you can. Then my grandfather Ben Bassett Sr. taught me how to build good relationships, always treat people fairly, and keep your promises. If you do that, you'll be successful, even if money isn't involved. I've found that this is also true in all kinds of relationships. You build a strong box and fix any weak spots you find. My grandfathers, grandmothers, and my mother always made sure my box was strong. When I marry and start my life with someone, you can trust that a strong box will be built around our love, with no weak spots. It was very inspiring, but I couldn't help but wonder why she didn't thank her dad in the speech. He moved back in a few months after coming to the cookout, and it took another month before they were close again. I made him the team leader because he earned it, and by the time a year had gone by, I thought they had worked through their issues. One day he just vanished. No notice, he missed work, packed his things in his truck, and left. He left a short note saying he was going back to California, that he was sorry, and he'd help with the kids. Heather was heartbroken once more. We had to get her and the kids into therapy to help them cope with his leaving. Ben and I tried to help and fill the gap, and it worked a little. Naturally, we hired detectives to find him, and they tracked him down 2 months later. He was working for a construction company on a big apartment project and living with an old girlfriend. It seemed she was why he wanted to go back to the West Coast. She had moved on and gotten married when he returned. That marriage didn't last long. They had kept in touch through emails on an account Heather didn't know about. When she told him she was single again and really missed him, he left the very next day. Heather was sad for a while, but then she moved on with her life. She couldn't just leave everything behind and run away. She filed for divorce 3 months after he left and served him the papers at his job. The divorce papers included a request for child support, but she gave him a way out. If he signed away his parental rights, he would be free. His new girlfriend wasn't happy about losing that much of his income and urged him until he agreed. 2 years later, Heather was the assistant head of payroll and HR, dealing with every worker in one way or another. I had sent her to complete her degree, allowing her to work half days to attend classes. When she returned to work full-time, she burst into my office and flopped onto my lap. "Why are you being so nice to me? I never told you this, but my first wife was very selfish and lied to me about having kids. She didn't want to adopt, and after we split, I found out she had surgery to prevent pregnancy. I thought I would never have a family and die alone until I met Angie. We knew we couldn't have children, but her love meant the world to me. Then you came into my life and gave me a chance to start over. You and the kids became special to me from that first weekend, and my feelings kept growing. Heather, you're the closest I'll ever have to a daughter, so I've decided to adopt you in my heart. You're too old for legal adoption, but emotionally, you are my child, and that means you are my heir too. That's why I encouraged you to get your degree. When I retire, my part of the business will go to you. I've talked to Sarah and David, and they believe it's a good idea to keep it in the family. The paperwork is all set, and all you need to do is take my place when I leave." She got very upset, so I called Angie to help her feel better. Angie comforted her until she stopped crying and smiled. "Did you really not see this coming? He has been proud of you since you came here. Honor his love and do a great job. You have about 10 to 12 years to get ready." Then David's son came over to handle some insurance papers and met Heather. There was a strong connection between them, and 15 months later I had the pleasure of giving her away at her wedding. It was nice to keep it in the family. Sarah was David's sister, and her son was in the military, so Heather and DJ, David Jr., would inherit everything. By this time, they were both in their mid-30s, and we were not surprised when they welcomed a son named David Reginald. Heather jokingly said, "Hey, you have the 2 older kids almost all the time now. Let me keep this one." It was really tough, but we held back. Jeremiah took after Benny and worked during summers and school breaks at the family business while both of his grandparents guided him. Lynette did the same at my office. She even worked with the construction teams for 2 summers before moving to the office to learn from her mom and Sarah. Jeremiah earned his business degree, and after 2 years, it was clear he would be running the family company soon. His grandparents were excited. By the time Lynette graduated, Angie was 70, and I was 64. Angie retired 3 years before, and this was my last year before Heather took over. We planned to stay active, travel, and support the younger generation. Jeremiah was already married, with a small son and another baby on the way. Linny wasn't ready to settle down just yet, but we knew it wouldn't be long before someone would come along to claim her. 14 years after he left, we learned that Benny Jr. had died in a work accident. He was trying to unload a heavy load of sheetrock when things went wrong. Instead of using 2 winches like safety rules required, he rushed and only used 1. The load toppled and fell on him sadly, and the accident report said it caused his death. We didn't find out until 3 weeks after his funeral, when the state was looking for family to contact. It turned out that his new wife had left him 3 years earlier, leaving him with 2 daughters. They couldn't find their mother, and California needed to decide what to do with the girls. Ben, Vicky, Angie, and I flew there as soon as we could. The girls were both rude and disrespectful. The older one was 11, and the younger one was 9. The oldest glared at us. "Why haven't we ever seen you if you're our grandparents? Until a few days ago, we didn't even know you were here. If we had, you'd know a lot more about us already." "I'm not going anywhere with you." Angie and Vicky looked upset, so I stepped in. "If they can't find your mom, you might not have a choice. If it comes down to wealthy grandparents taking you in or staying in foster care, the state will do what's best for them. Think about it. If you don't have anything important keeping you here, you might want to come back with us to see what's possible." The older girl seemed unhappy, but the younger one looked scared, so I focused on her. "What do you think, princess? New clothes, a big house, an older brother and sister to help you out, and I promise I can be a fun grandparent. I have good references if you want to hear them." Benny joined in, saying we often tried to see who could spoil the grandkids more. Then we stepped back and let the women speak. Angie showed them photos of their older siblings, pointing out how much they looked alike. She showed them pictures of our houses, including the outdoor kitchen, pool, and some of our boats. Benny and Vicky had bought a small boat for retirement, but we still used the big boat when everyone wanted to ride together. Vicky's house was in the countryside and had some land. They even had a few animals, like 3 horses. Even though we didn't ride much, Jer and Linny loved it, so they spent time there as often as they were at our place. We tried to spoil the kids, but also made sure to teach them important life lessons, so they were well-rounded kids. The younger girl, Vanessa, smiled shyly. "I've never been on a horse." Vicky smiled back, excited. "Come home with us. I'll teach you how to ride." Charlene looked intrigued by the boats. "I've never been fishing." "Well, if you come back with us, you'll spend so much time on the water you'll feel just like a duck." We stayed for 2 weeks while they tried to find their mom. During that time, we took them to fun places. We visited an amusement park and a ranch where they could ride horses for the first time. Mostly, we just spent time together so they could see we weren't scary people. Vanessa really connected with Benny and Vicky, and Charlene warmed up to us. In the end, they chose to go home with us, and since Vanessa wanted to, they stayed with Benny and Vicky. Charlene went with them too. We were a bit sad, but we knew they would need time away, and we usually had them over on weekends. The first year was tough. We had to help them break some bad habits, but by the second year, they felt safe and loved. They started to relax, and soon they fit right into our family. Heather and her husband guided them, while Jer wanted to spend time with a woman he met at work. They dated for a year before he finally introduced her at a family cookout. He was very nervous because she was Indian. We never found out why he was worried, but when she arrived, we welcomed her warmly. She really became part of the family when she started bringing food to the cookouts. One time she brought a huge dish of curry, and we loved it so much that we barely touched the steaks and chicken. He joked with his little sisters that they would use them as practice when they had kids. They were so fascinated by Mary, her American name, that they wanted to wear saris to a wedding of one of her friends. The photos from that day are proudly displayed on our wall. I think the kids kept us feeling young. Angie was there for Vanessa's high school graduation, but it was the last time she was out in public. She was just a couple of months short of 80 when she fell and broke her hip. 2 weeks later, she passed away from complications. It was sudden and left me heartbroken. After 6 months of grieving, I realized we had a wonderful life together. From the moment we met, we were always together. We didn't have other dates or relationships. We were completely joined and never let go. That kind of bond is rare. Every night, I would look at the plaque I had given her a few years after we got married. It was an award plaque that said, "Hottest Gilf," with our state and the date at the bottom. Each year, I would take it back to the shop and add a new date. When Lynette had her first baby, I got a new plaque that said, "Hottest Gilf of the Year," and started adding those dates too. She would laugh every time I added a new year, and she turned bright red one day when Vanessa asked her what a Gilf was. I said it meant grandmother I'll love forever, which made her blush even more. I had talked with Angie about what would happen after we were gone. We agreed that if Vanessa didn't have a house, she would get ours. Benny and Vicky agreed that Charlie would get theirs. The next year, Benny passed away peacefully in his sleep. I held Vicky and took care of all the arrangements. I started having her over to my house a couple of times a week to check on her, and a year later she moved in with me. We never had a romantic relationship, but we loved each other as friends. We were just two older people who didn't want to feel lonely. The kids were all smiling, and I bet Angie and Benny were laughing hard. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch in rocking chairs, watching the sunset and talking about the people we had lost. We both agreed that no matter how we started, our later years were wonderful, and we were very lucky to have loved the people we did. One night, we talked for a long time about everything. When I got up to go inside, she said she wanted to stay out for a little while to enjoy the cool air. I left her there for about 45 minutes, wondering about the tears in her eyes. Then I decided to bring her a blanket if she was going to stay out, or help her inside if she was ready. But it seemed she wouldn't need a blanket anymore. She had passed away, still warm and with a peaceful smile on her face. I imagined that right now she and Benny were hugging tightly, while Angie watched with a smile. I sat down next to her and waited for the ambulance, talking to her softly. "Vicky, you may have gotten it a little late in your life, but you had what you wanted. A good man to love, children to raise, and you were surrounded by a big family that loved you just the way you are. Not many people can say that when they leave this life. If you can hear me, please let Angie know I'll be there soon with a special sign for you. It will say best grandma ever in heaven, and that will be true." The paramedics arrived, and I kissed her cheek, wishing her a safe journey. They carefully laid her on the stretcher. I sighed and started making phone calls, knowing the house would fill up soon. I thought about the girls who had stopped calling her grandmother after just a year and started calling her mom. Vicky had said that was the second best moment in her life, right after marrying Benny. They would be heartbroken, and we would need to be strong for them. Honestly, I wasn't sure how much strength I had left. I looked up at the stars and smiled. Soon, my dear, soon. Hey, listeners. If you enjoyed watching this video and want to stay updated with our latest content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss out on what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video with Queen Cheating Tales.